Oh, welcome back everyone. So you saw my first two videos about the crank bearing, what I found when I went to put the new Isoflex in the PTO side crank bearing, and I didn't like the looks of it, so I'm gonna rebuild the engine. I think the top end's ready anyways. And if I want to replace that crank bearing, I've got to pull it down anyway, so I might as well just get it. I've got a remanufactured crank. I finally got all my parts. So I'll take you with me when I take this thing apart. I'm just starting on it today. It's going to take me a couple days, I think, probably get the engine out, and then I'm going to do a little bit of clean the ports up and stuff like that, clean it all up, put it back together, and make sure the crank's good and true. The rebuilder I got the crank from apparently does a pretty good job of truing them. I'll find out, and I'll check it anyways, and I might even weld it, so I'll have to true it if I weld it. So I already got the side panels off. I've decided that I'm gonna get a different silencer here. I got this different can, so it had an MBRP, but it was the race MBRP, and it was fine. But I just didn't. It was a little too noisy for my liking. So Royal Distributing had these Super Q skins cans on sale, so I was just getting that fitted up. It's just sitting in there, obviously, but it's pretty nice. It was a good price, and it's ceramic coated, and apparently not much louder than stock. So it's just the MBRP was just a little too noisy for me, and the people that I ride with, I don't think appreciated it much either. So I like to get a little more stealthy. You know, if you're riding down through a neighborhood or something, you don't want to be. Yeah, depending on how hard you are on the pipe, they can be quieter, but you don't want to be waking people up or annoying people, and then they just call the cops on you and stuff. So anyway, so I'm just gonna start taking the hood off, all the plastic off here. Had to get some of this stuff started. I should have put some penetrating oil on that. I'll probably have to, just to pop it off the rest of the way. So T25 Torx is what you need to get the hood off. It's the last hood screw there. Then to pop your instrument cluster out, you want to get a screwdriver in there, of course, and just pop those two tabs. Pull it out. Something else that you might want to take note of is a particular problem I had on this machine is the brake light, like the emergency brake indicator, light would come on while I was riding, and the brake was released. And I think it eventually will throw a code. Get that harness out of there with one hand. I think it eventually will throw a code if that brake light keeps coming on. And I was reading on the forums is that it is a black and white wire in here, and you'll notice it. I don't think it's that harness. I think it's the harness that goes into the cluster. Anyway, so it's black and white, and you want to make sure that it's not too tight, because I found that when I took this apart and checked it when it was first doing that it was really tight, the black and white wire. I think I cut a couple of clips off, like a couple of zip ties off, and the light quit coming on. But then last time I rode, it came on again, so I've got to check that, and maybe it's a pin in this plug here that I'm having so much trouble with. I don't know. There we go, finally come off. Alright, so that takes your cluster off. Back there for the time being. You got your T25 Torx here, up here, and then your hood comes off. I'll see if I can get this one hand. I'm going to stand for my camera here. Oh yeah, I forgot. Then you got this quarter lock airbox one here. So there's lots of good videos on how to get this off, of course. So you can get familiar with how to pull the hood off before we get the engine out. Just gonna do that. I'm gonna need two hands, so I'm gonna remove that right now. Okay, got the hood off. I forgot that you just pull the rubber boot off of your intake here, but you can loosen it off here and just pull the quarter turnout when you're taking the hood off. That's probably the proper way of doing it. So you got a broken seal there I'll have to replace, always something. And then you just unplug your mass airflow sensor there. Pop that off. Yeah, okay. Add that to the list of things to do. No seal in there. So the hood comes off once you get those torque fasteners out. Seat is just pull the cushion back a bit. You see the lever there, you pop that off. Sure anybody who's owned one of these is probably taking the seat off. That's really nice and easy to do that. So I do like how Skidoo set the seat up. And I just popped the ring off the dash here. I can pull that up and unplug my harnesses for the buttons on for the hand warmers and stuff like that. I'm going to be putting a new thumb warmer on, a new used one, and a new brake lever because I backing up and my brake lever somehow snagged a post in the tent that I usually store it in and it broke off. So I was going to try and build one, but a guy that I deal with got me one. He just gave me one because I gave him a deal on some parts, so that was a real bonus. I'm just going to put the factory one, good used one, back on. Now I'm going to have to unplug some more harnesses here, get the dash off. But anyways, I've also got a brace kit here that I'm going to be installing as well. So I guess this helps you to not bend the nun or the bulkhead at all. I can't remember, the S module, that's what I'm thinking of. Apparently that helps toughens it up a bit, the S mod. So I've got to put that in eventually here. I guess I've got to pull the secondary clutch off, the primary clutch, haven't done that yet. I'm just kind of, it's a long weekend and got some fresh snow. I wish I could ride today. It's a little bit cold, but I'm just kind of taking it easy. I'm not really motivated when it's a holiday. I could take the recoil off too, I guess here. So I'm just kind of taking my time. I don't want to break anything. I'm not in a hurry. But I just thought I'd film it. I didn't see a lot of good videos on pulling the engine out of these in case there's a couple of clips. I've had this dash off before, but it was quite a long time ago. And I kind of forgot a little bit. You know how that goes. So, anyways, I should probably see too if I can get some Cobra cord for my recoil, because I already fixed the pull cord once. I think it's not the factory one, so it's been replaced once, but now this sled, it's amazing that this thing's now 7 years old, so it's definitely probably due for a new recoil cord. So I hate it when you break those up on the mountain and you got to use your emergency strap. We'll be also rebuilding the primary clutch, so this has got 4,600 kilometers on this engine. It still runs really good, but like I say, that crank bearing makes me nervous, and I don't think it's ever been out of the chassis. It's never had a top end, so I'm pretty sure it's ready for a top end. I'm pretty sure the pistons. It's a mountain sled, and when I bought it, I got it for a fair price, a good deal. But at the same time, it didn't really have anything done to it, any upgrades or anything, and it definitely has been ridden pretty hard. Not by me, but I could just tell by the condition that it was in that this thing has had some hard miles. So I'm not going to trust that the engine's going to last that much longer. I'm going to do it. This is a preventative thing. It's not ready. I don't like waiting until I blow something up and then you got to buy a short block or something. I can do this, save a lot of money, just spending a few hours doing it myself, and then I know it's done right. I don't have to worry about somebody, a crank that's not that good or something like that, something bolt's not torqued or somebody missed something. I only have myself to blame if that happens. That being said, I think I got a warranty on the crank, but I won't have a warranty on the engine. So I guess it's give or take. You save some money, do it yourself, but if you buy a short block, you're going to have a warranty. Okay, so next, like I say, I already took the stinger out of here. Take the springs off the pipe. It looks like I may have to take the nose cone off. That's no big deal. A couple T25s in here, and then pops out. So I think I'm going to have to do that to get the pipe out of there. Pull the Y pipe off after that. But not, first I think I'm going to work on my clutches and jack shaft. Apparently I've got to take the chain case cover off to get my secondary clutch off. That's what they're saying. So we'll start on that now. So I'm getting closer. Got to pull the tank off. So you have to pull two 13 millimeter nuts off in there. So the nuts just in there. I just put this cover back on to show you. Then you just got to pull this cover back to get at them, and then these just come right off. That. Then you might have to just, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Take those nuts off. You come up here, there's one long bolt that goes through your tripod here. And then these are 10 millimeter wrench and sockets you need for those. And then these two braces on the side here, and then there's one there you can loosen off. I didn't loosen it off because then you can move the back parts of the tripod up. And you might just have to push your handlebars up a little if it's binding a little bit on you. Come on now. There we go. And then you can just, if you loosen it off, it's a little easier, but I didn't bother. Just pull that tripod up like that, and then you can pull your fuel tank back and start removing it. But it's stuck a little bit on these rear mounts, so you just got to work those off a little bit. Don't lose any of these washers and spacers and stuff, of course. And your 13mm nuts there. And then you got to pull this back, disconnect the fuel lines. So that's not too bad, you know, a few bolts, pull it back. Got some lines up here, disconnect there, you can see, get that out of the way. I've also got just a couple things that I'm going to do while I've got this apart. Boys and reeds on order for it, and a BDX Y-pipe because they were blowing out Y-pipes at BDX, so myself and one of the guys I ride with are getting those. So the Y-pipe, I don't mind, like, you know, you don't have to pull too much off to get at that. I might, if it's going to be a long time, like shipping and everything, getting stuff from the States is taking so long, I might just put it back together with the stock Y-pipe and then put the BDX one on when I get it. Depending on how long it's going to be, I might have to put a trace on the package and see if it's going to be a terribly long time for it to get to Canada. Who knows? Never know these days. So I'm going to get that tank off there and out of my way and keep taking parts off this old girl. Okay, so I've got the fuel tank pulled back there. You just unplug your sensor there, you know, and then your fuel pump harness. It's on that one, I believe. So just pull that. Just be careful, you know, to work the tab back, because some of these on a sled this age and through heat cycles, hot cold cycles and stuff like that, these pieces of plastic are going to start getting crispy. There's a constant velocity, like the ones on CV boots, the clamp on this this hose here. I'll probably replace that just with a standard hose clamp when I put it back together, because it's one of these style, kind of a pain. So then you've got this special quick coupler fuel fitting here. So you just want to be careful, you don't want to wreck this fitting. You just want to pry up on it. I can't really do it with one hand here holding the camera, but you just want to see where it pops up like that. Screwdriver underneath there, and just be careful, like I say, you don't want to break anything because the stuff's getting to the age where it might be getting a little crusty. And just pull that keeper out like that. And then your fuel line should pop off, but this one isn't. I gotta go to town here. I've gotta shut down for a couple of minutes and take a run to town. Meet some people, so I just thought I'd try and get this off before I go. Okay, so I think that one, actually this keeper you might be able to just use one off a Ford fuel filter if you do break it. I gotta get it out of there and find out, because it's being a little stubborn. Anyhow, that's how the fuel tank comes off. So you got two hoses, your pressure return there, your harness, and then your vent line that goes down. The easiest way to take it off is down here. Like I say, it's all plastic, so just don't don't force it, get too rough with it, because then you might break something. You don't want to do that. Anyway, I'm gonna just work that line off and get the fuel tank off, and then things are really opening up here, so it looks good. Okay, pipe sensor will not budge. I've tried warming it up, and I've got some penetrating oil on it now, but it just doesn't want to budge. Unfortunate part is it doesn't have a plug except for way up here by the module. So it plugs into this module, both pipe sensors. I think it'll be fine now. I might just leave it there while I work on the engine. Pull the engine out, it's out of the way. So I don't think I'm going to bother pulling. I could pull that module out and the other pipe sensor here out if it comes right down to it. I'll see how much room I've got. But, you know, someday I'm going to probably have to take that out of there if it goes, and I don't know what heating it and beating it's done to it. So anyway, hopefully I didn't damage it. So the fuel line, that's right, I was going to mention that got the fuel lines in the tank all pulled off here, and where's the one I was going to, there it is there. So it's got one of those quick connect fuel line ends on it, fittings. So you don't want to you don't want to pull that all the way out. You just pull it out that much, and then I don't have a disconnect tool for this. I just pulled that out and I just wiggled it off, and it'll come off. But you don't want to break your clip there, your keeper. Like I say, I'll probably just replace this one with a normal hose clamp that I can use a screwdriver to get off. I'll have to get a, I think I'll get a new fuel filter for it as well while I got it apart. And new plugs. I'll have to index plugs. So now I've got the airbox. You just got to loosen off your two hose clamps and then get this pull. It's the only thing that holds the airbox on. There we go. And that comes off. Yeah, throttle bodies are all gunged up. Inside the airbox doesn't look too bad, but I may just take it and steam clean it all out. I think that's mainly just like clutch and belt dust that gets in the throttle bodies. I've had these apart before. When I think it was when I put the riser on it, I had to put a longer throttle cable on, and I had it torn down, and I took the throttle bodies off at that point and cleaned them all up, but they're dirty again, as you can see. Sucking in belt dust likely. So I might see that I'm kind of stalling on pulling the clutch off. I've got to get that off here. Forgot to grab the puller. I think I'll try to use the puller on it, or I can tilt the sled up, but I've got my sled on wheels here, so it's kind of a pain to tilt it up on its side and do the oil or water trick. I might have to. I'll see how far I get today. I got to pull the Y pipe off still to get it out of here. I got to pull the throttle bodies off and the boots, and apparently everybody's telling me, or on the forums anyway, I'm reading posts about the boots cracking on these, so that's something to check. I've been hearing that, yeah, that you get a crack in an air boot and then it'll lean out on you, and then you burn down your engine. So I'm gonna definitely be taking a really close look at those. I don't know how far away they'd be if I have to order them, but yeah. So. And like I say, I'll be putting new spark plugs in, so I don't think I'm going to buy the expensive BRP ones. I think I'm just going to, I've been reading about that too. I'm going to buy just your NGK plugs, the same part number, and I think I'll just index them myself, so I'll be covering that in this video as well. So it's coming apart pretty good. Like I say, I'm not giving her, I'm not in a big hurry here, and just kind of doing this for something different today. And I'm going to carry on now. I guess I'll work on getting that jack shaft and secondary clutch off now. Pulling the secondary now, and it's, judging from when I pulled the primary clutch and made those videos, I think this sled's going to fight me a little bit on it. I didn't feel like draining the chain case, and I'm going to take the cover off eventually, so I just took the bolt out of the end here, just took the cap off. Pry that off with a screwdriver, take the bolt out. I think that was, let's see here, 15 millimeter bolt, pop that out. And I ended up just tapping on the end of this to get it loosened off, to get the shaft to move, because it didn't want to move. So I was, show you the bearing. Lots of seized up parts on this thing. So that's the bearing that comes out of this bearing tower here. It's got this steel retainer, so there's a 13 millimeter and a 10 millimeter nut that has to come off there. The one holds the brake line, a clip that holds the brake line. Pop that off, and then that bearing should come out of the tower. It wasn't, so you can take a dead blow hammer like this and beat on it. That's what I was doing, and it wasn't moving, so I ended up just going and putting a big bar that was bigger than the threads on the bolt hole in the other end of the jack shaft and the chain case there, and I gave it a couple of good hits with a hammer. I wouldn't, you know, if it didn't move, I wouldn't try to force it that way, because that's just not a good idea. Yeah, you could mushroom the shaft and it won't come out of the gear or other problems, but you can tap it, like, just be careful that you don't damage it. So pop the belt off, and finally got this thing out. There we go. So I'm going to take a good look at this bearing, and it's probably gonna have to be at least the bare minimum. I'll pop the seal out and grease it, because I see there is rust on the inside race. Doesn't feel great. I don't like that. I actually kind of chipped the outside of the race here a little bit, because I was getting a drift in there and just trying to tap on it. If I'm this far in, I might just order a new bearing. probably take a picture of that part number, and if I can get one from a parts supplier, I'll replace that. I did see a video too of a guy that was pulling all these Torx screws out here and putting in hex screws, and that makes it easier to take it apart when it's in the chassis, I guess. So that's something that I think I'll do. Get those out, and then if you ever have to take it apart in the trail, it's a little easier. And he said quite oftentimes these screws strip. So that's another thing that I'll be looking at closely. You can see that housing, I put some penetrating oil in there. It actually did work in there, which probably helped, but lots of corrosion in there, so I'm going to have to clean all that up, and then I'm going to put a lot of Never-Seez on it when it goes back together, and I'll be packing this minimum, pop the steel out and pack it with good synthetic grease. But I'm thinking that I might just pop that bearing off there and replace it while I got it out. Yeah, it feels rough, feels like it's kind of dry. So the last thing I want is to have it all apart and not replace it, and then the first ride I go out, take that bearing out. So that's where I'm at now. Like I say, I think I'm going to leave the clutch on today, the primary on, because I don't have the puller at home, and I think now it'll come off with the puller because I never seized it and I torqued it to spec and everything. So other than the pipe sensor seized and that bearing seized, but I already have that apart, it's not going too bad. I think I'll take that Y pipe off next. See, it's hex screws, so I don't even want to think about if that's seized. That's going to be a pain, but pretty accessible. It's not too hard. The middle ones are going to be a bit of a pain to get out of there. And that can be changed in frame, so if my new one doesn't show up, I might just put the engine back together so I can ride until it does. But I've got to wait for the reeds. I forgot to order reeds when I ordered the can, so it'll be a week before I get those, so I might just wait for all that stuff to show up. Okay, so next is going to be the Y-pipe, I guess. Y-pipe here. Got 4 bolts on each side, 2 in the top, 2 underneath. The middle ones on the bottom are probably going to be the ones that are the most challenging to get at. But a long extension like this, if you got a wobble extension, that'd probably work best. And then just a hex Allen. And there's a 6mm. I just pounded it in so it was seated really well. Also, if you give it a couple hits with a hammer, like, you know, don't get crazy, but tap it a couple times. It's also going to jar the threads and just make them a little easier to come out. The middle ones, of course, because they're a little harder to get at, were a little bit seized, but not seized, I shouldn't say, they're just a little tighter. But it all came out. You just want to make sure that your bit's seated in there really well, of course. Alright, so that's off. Bad pull. I'll get the recoil off next, probably. So that needs to come off. Sled does have a billet thermostat, so I've got coolant lines to take off there, but they don't have those constant tension clamps on them anymore. I put just regular hose clamps with a 5/16 head, and that's my billet thermostat. So it does have that upgrade. It still overheats. It still heats up. I got to run scratchers and stuff. So, but whatever. I think it helped though. I don't think it heats up quite as bad. So I'm interested to see what the pistons look like when I get this thing out. So I think I'll go ahead and start unplugging stuff and see what all hoses are that I got to take off. Now's the time to really do a good inspection of the coolant lines and see what they look like, because now's the time to change those, especially that one that goes underneath the engine. So I'm getting the throttle bodies reeds out. I have the throttle bodies off for a bit now, but the reed boots are going to be, the reed cage is going to be stuck in the boot. So I got this one on the left side off. It's going to be tight getting this screw out of here. So you just got to kind of bend it, you know, grab it with some pliers and bend it, and it'll come out of there. Then separate the boot from the reeds. The reeds will stay in there. And pull it out. You won't be able to get all this out in one piece, but it does, the reeds, even though they're stuck in the boot, they will come out. Okay, and they look like they're in pretty good shape. I do have new boys and reeds coming that I'm going to replace these with. A little bit of gunk on them, I guess. I'm not too sure. See some stuff in my throttle bodies, stuff in the boots, so I'm not sure what kind of shape the pistons are in. Actually, so far they look pretty good. Didn't do a compression check. A friend of mine has the exact same sled. He took his apart, and it was the pistons had been heated up in it, and it was still running fine, but he was losing compression and the pistons were not in nice shape. It's got a couple hundred less kilometers on his than this one has. So I just thought that with the crank bearing issue, it was time to do the top end as well. It's probably due for a top end, overdue for a top end at this point. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with that. Now I'm going to pull the other boot off. Of course, to get the engine out, it's not going to fit through there with those reed boots on. Or intake boots, I guess you'd say. And so you could leave the reed cage in there. It comes right down to it. If you're worried about dropping something into the engine or something, you can just leave them in until you pull it out. That wouldn't hurt anything. Okay, I'm going to carry on. Got both the reed boots off now. Pardon me, the intake boots I should say, and the reed cages are out. So my reeds look good, they're not cracked or anything. I'm going to have two coolant lines that come off of the throttle bodies on the bottom here. Since this is direct injection, of course, there's no fuel lines on the throttle body. I'm just going to leave them there. I don't really feel like taking the cable and stuff off right now. So here's one, just got one of those constant tension clamps. Here's the other side here. Now I'm going to show you the other fuel line. So you got crimped on fuel lines going to your injectors here. Where they end up, one goes to the tank, the fuel tank, so that was the one I took off earlier. The other one is up in here, and as you can see, it has, I'll zoom in a little bit here, it's got one of those plastic connectors on it again. Try and get some light in there. There we go. See, so I pulled it up. This one was a little more tricky because you have to pull both sides of the clip up at the same time. See, so now you can see that it's just loose in there. And one side actually came right out. There we go. I'm probably going to drop it. Yeah. Okay, I dropped it down inside, but that's okay because the engine's coming out. So that's something to watch for. That one was a little trickier to get out. It's hard to get at. So just be careful and don't break it. See if I can get my hand in there and get the fuel line off. There we go. That's all it takes to get the fuel line off. A little bit of fuel coming out of it there, draining. The other one's already disconnected, of course, because it disconnected it when I took the tank out. So, a couple more things unhooked. I got a few more lines, like the main coolant line is going to be down there. Goes to the water pump. That has to be unhooked and taken out of there. So, a few more things yet. But it's on its way out, and I haven't been working, like I say, I've been taking my time. I haven't been giving her on this, and only been at it for a few hours. It doesn't take long to pull one of these engines out of here from what I can tell. I'm going to leave got a couple of the engine mount bolts, the rear ones out. I'm going to leave a couple in because I want to get that clutch pulled off while it's still in the chassis. So I don't feel like going to town and getting the clutch puller, I think, because it's at work. So I think I'll just wait. I'll get back to work tomorrow, and I'll bring it home tomorrow afternoon. Pull that clutch off. Got the recoil pulled off, so that's pretty easy to get at. T25 Torx for those. And the reed cage, or the intake boot bolts are 8mm. And they're fairly easy to get at except for the one. Got to get one out with a wrench, the rest you can get a socket on. Okay, so I'll carry on. Anyway, so there's a couple oil lines here that go up to your power valves. So what I did is I just disconnected the one from this like check valve here because it's shorter, and then the longer black one goes on here. They got zip ties on them, but I just was able to pull them off by hand and not on there very tight. Unhook your wiring harness to power valves, and then there's the two lines on this side here, so you can see in there. Everything's in the way. Try and get that out of there. Okay, so see, same two lines there. Even with the zip tie, comes off pretty easy. And then the other one's clamped on the, it looks like a check valve they have there. It's got a clamp on the bottom, so I just pull off the top, and you're going to be able to know which one goes where when you put it back together. So it's just like this one. Metal clamp on the bottom, nothing on the top one, so just take the top one off. There's another coolant line there that's a little bit tighter to get at. Pop that off. That goes onto the injector there. See what else did oh yeah, so there's a sensor up here. I think that's your knock sensor. Doesn't go into the water jacket or anything. I think that's like a 12 or 13 mil and you pop that off, and this is what the sensor looks like here. So it just goes in there like that. So you want to get that popped off. Let's see what else. Harness is there. Oh yeah, so these injector lines, they're not really injector lines, they're oil lines here. Take that bolt out, take the clamp off the side of the block. I found the best place to unhook these is right here. But just be careful, because this is a plastic manifold piece here. There is a spring in your top line that was stuck in here, so just be careful when you pull it off that you don't bend the spring or stretch it. And I'm just going to leave that in there for now and pull it out with the engine, because underneath there you've got other lines that go down into your block, oil lines. So for now that's just going to stay there. I think that's the easiest way just to get the engine out. Just unhook them right there. They go back around and they go up into the oil pump on the other side of the engine there. Other than that, I think so. You got one big coolant line there. You want to make sure you orient when you put it back together what you're going to have to get that clamp on properly, the hose clamp. But that's your top coolant line there. Has to be taken off. I've still got the bottom one hooked to the water pump, but it's not going to be hard to get that off. I'm going to wait till I pull the engine out. That's probably going to puke coolant all over the place, so be prepared for that. That one goes up, it's got a T, and it goes from the cooler, it goes up to the thermostat. But all this stuff will stay on the sled. Here's your two oil lines here that I unhooked. See, these ones have those crimp-on connectors, so I didn't want to pull them off here. The other, where I pulled them off, that plastic piece, there's no clamps on it, so that's the easiest place to pull them off. And leave all that stuff on the sled. I haven't had to mark anything or label anything. It's pretty obvious where everything goes back together again, like the lines are different lengths, the connectors don't interchange, or you know, most of the connectors are different, so they don't interchange. They go to the area where there's a connector to put them into. So so far I haven't seen anything that has to be labeled, but if you want to label it, like when you're taking it apart and stuff, absolutely do it. That's a great idea, especially if it's your first time doing the job. This is my first time pulling the engine, but I've had it up down to this stage before. I've had the throttle bodies off in the past. When I put the thermostat in, I had to pull most of this stuff off anyway. But yeah, they come apart pretty quick. If I had to remember to bring home my electric ratchet and a few things from work, I could have got this done even quicker. But like I say, I'm just kind of taking it easy and just stat holiday Monday here, and just trying to enjoy the job and things done. So I'm going to film the entire rebuild on this. Be able to follow me through all that, top and bottom end. Check the pistons out, and they look really good, surprisingly, from what I can see from inside just looking down the intakes. But anyways, like I say, it needs a rebuild, so I'd rather do it now than when it's getting helied off a mountain. Almost got it out. So I'll get on the other side here. Pulled the bolt out of the clutch and it just fell off, so that was, I don't know, I torqued it to the right spec. Maybe I should have just double checked it. So when I get this done, I'll definitely be checking the spec on that clutch for sure. So I took this mount off that's sitting up here. Front mount that goes in here. Take that off. Unbolted both front engine mounts. That other mount, there's one bolt in it, but it's down by the rad hose. Let's see here. See, it's in there. The rad hose is stopping it from coming out completely, but I'm gonna have to get that out. I'm just working my water pump hose off here. I think everything else is disconnected pretty good. There is clearance here. It's tight, but there is clearance without taking the injectors out. I think I can slide the engine out. I hope so, because that's what my plan is. I've just about got her. See, it's on an angle, and I've got it out past the mounts there a couple inches. I'm just checking to see if there's something else holding it. Got the thermostat, the coolant hose to the thermostat spout off. Worked that off with a screwdriver. I don't know if these hoses here are got a clip or something holding them to the side of the engine block. I'll find out. So when you're pulling it out, just take it easy, and if you notice something's hanging up, then you can unhook it before you break something. But I'm pretty sure I got everything unplugged here and it's ready to come out. So pull it out the side here. Just going to keep working at it. It's fairly heavy, so it's kind of awkward. But I think I can, oops, I think I can lift it out of there now. Okay, I was able to wiggle it out of there. I thought I was going to have to take the jack shaft bearing support here off. I'm glad I didn't have to. Took this mount out to give myself a little bit more room. Reason why I'm glad I didn't have to take this jack shaft bearing support off is because that 10 mil down there is bolted through the tunnel, so you have to try and get a wrench on the inside of the tunnel, and there's very little room between the track and the tunnel to try to get up in there. You probably get an extension in there to get it out. Okay, so there was a bunch of stuff that was still attached to the engine. 2 oil lines down here to the crankcase, which I knew about and just kind of forgot. Started pulling it out, and of course they got real tight, but they didn't break. So I was able to get those out. Then there's another oil line right there. It goes on. That's sure it's one of the. It's hanging in here somewhere, anyways. No, you know what? I had to put it up here because oil was leaking out of it. So that's center bearing gear, water pump gear lube. Then I forgot about the wiring harness that goes to the ECM off the stator. So now looking at it, the way it's routed, see they got all these clamps and stuff where that harness is routed right onto the ECM. There was also this holder here, this thing that holds the oil lines that go down to the engine block. They went up to here. There's one little 5/16 head bolt in there, which is really annoying because everything else is metric, and then they got these little 5/16 bolts, and it goes right into there and holds this on. So that was holding it back. But the thing that I'm glad I noticed the most was the ECM. So I had to pull the ECM down, I had to pull the coolant, the overflow tank there off, and the overflow tank is connected to the thermostat housing. Like I say, I've got the billet thermostat housing, so I already had like standard hose clamps on there that I'd replaced a while ago when I did that. So one fuel line was hanging a little bit, but luckily this one here was still stuck on the ECM. So I guess you got to pull the ECM out when you pull the engine, and I should be able to get these wires out of here now. The way they've got them routed, it's pretty tough to unplug anything without actually dropping the ECM down. Yeah, so that wasn't, it's a little more involved than what I originally had thought. So those two are out of the way. Everything's unhooked, everything's clear of the engine now. I had to take, yeah, that front mount off there, so that was the one that the starter hooks onto. The rear, I was able to sneak it through. The water pump is going to want to, the water pump elbow there is going to want to hang up when you take it out. So you've got to kind of rock the engine back and forth like that as you pull it out. So anyway, that was my goal tonight, was to, this afternoon, was to get this out. So I'm going to just pull it out and put it on the bench, and then maybe tomorrow I can start pull the heads off and power valves and stuff out, and start tearing it down and see what we find inside. So I didn't realize that when I started with the ECM, just let's see how's it going here. It just clips in and sits up here, and it just hangs on up in here. Coolant bottle out of the way, that thing's a pain. And it just kind of holds on to your oil tank here. This is probably the biggest pain, is getting this this connector here out. So you just slide the red lock down like that, only that far, don't break it. And I just pushed it with a screwdriver on the top here, just like that. Push those two down, pull it out. It's nice to unhook all these connectors so I can put not dielectric grease, but some oil on them when I put them back, some fluid film I'm going to use, not fluid film, but some pen lube. And so then you got a Deutsch connector, and this one I think is that the one? There's one of these gray ones had a lock, and that was the, you just got to pull the little yellow lock out. This here, I think it was that one. And it's kind of a pain. You just got to pop that out, don't break it. And when it goes back together, we'll put it back in. This one here is your, I believe it goes to the oil tank. Yeah, right there. So I pulled on that one a little bit too hard. It was pretty tight, but I didn't damage it. It goes to the main harness. So I guess the best thing to do is just get your coolant overflow bottle off there, you know, unhook it from the thermostat, pull off your ECM, and then you got access to some of these oil lines. You could do it that way. Unhook this, or you can unhook the oil lines from the engine like I did, and then just pull the ECM out, and then when I go back together, I'm going to have room to get around in here and put it all back together. It doesn't matter if I got to pull the oil tank off and stuff now. It's not a big deal. Like, you can see that it's kind of in my way, but if it stays there, I think I can still get the engine back in. Hooking up all the oil lines and stuff like that's going to be the pain when I'm going back together. Or maybe not. Whoops. It might not be so bad. So, engine's out. Here it is. And let's take a look here. Just looking at pistons. Let me get some light in there. And there's no scuffing or anything on the pistons. I can even see the little ridges from machining on them still. Really good condition still. See, that one's still got some of the black coating on it, the anti-scuff coating. So I was surprised at how good a shape they're in still. That's a good sign. Definitely happy with that. Let's see if I can get down a little further. There's closer to the crown of the piston. Still got good compression. So let's pull it around. Look in the exhaust. Oh, okay. So, oh no, that's just oil on there. See, some oil. There's, is that a dual ring piston? Maybe the top end's been done in this engine. No, a single ring. So I believe this engine's never been rebuilt. So I see a tiny bit of wear, but not too much. Looks good so far. Don't see any scuffing. Take a look at this side. Yeah, as far as I can see inside there, it looks pretty good. Alright, so this is going to be just a preventative maintenance rebuild. There's no catastrophic failures. Looking at the cylinders, so far I can't see anything. Anyways, I'm going to take it all apart anyway, it doesn't matter. I just was kind of anxious to look inside there, see what I found. So the only issue with this machine was it was getting hard to start. It wouldn't start on the first pull. I had to pull it probably 4 or 5 times. So I don't know if that maybe is a weak fuel pump, or if I need new spark plugs and indexed properly. For either or could do that. I'm going to clean a little bit of the rough edges up in there when I have it off too. The cylinder off. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. Tomorrow I'm going to go ahead and start tearing them down.